Welcome back to this special correspondence edition of Off the Record as Michigan lawmakers leave town with no budget deal. Chuck Stokes, Clara Hendrickson, Chad Livengood, and Bill Ballinger on deck with the story behind the stories. So sit in with us as we get the inside out. Off the Record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Bellwether Public Relations, a full-service strategic communications agency partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and issue advocacy. Learn more at bellwetherpr.com. And now, this edition of Off the Record with Tim Skubic.
Thank you very much. Welcome to our holiday edition of Off the Record as we're taping on Thursday morning, so could everybody get out of here. And do you do fireworks?
No.
No? Do you?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, okay, all right. Our lead story is not fireworks because there were none. There were none. So what happened on the budget? They left town without one.
Nothing happened on the budget. I mean, the two chambers remain really far apart. I don't think this should really come as a surprise to anyone. We have divided state government that has been quite unproductive, and you know, it was only until last week that the two legislative leaders really got down to the table to try and negotiate a budget deal. Speaker Hall wanted to take this kind of piecemeal approach with K-12 and roads and then deal with the rest of the budget later. Senate Majority Leader Winnie Brinks has wanted to do the whole thing all at once, and she has sort of taken the position, I'd rather get this right than get it done fast. Of course, you have schools that, they've already put together their budget and they're sort of in the dark about what the state budget is going to look like. So probably a little bit longer until this whole thing wraps up.
Full confession, I said on this show from this seat last week that they would get a deal. So much for my insight. How about yours?
You did, yeah. I didn't know. I was going to bring that up, Tim, but yeah.
The best defense is a good offense, baby.
So yes, I mean this was, as Clara said, this was predictable that we were going to see this kind of stalemate. Now, how long are we going to drag this out? Is kind of the key question. The Senate added some days of session in the summer. You know, they don't really like to work too much in the summer between the 4th of July holiday and Labor Day. So we'll see if they feel the pressure to do this, because the school districts, I mean, right now, universities, including Michigan State University where we're sitting, are starting to cut jobs and lay people off. And so that's going to start, resonating a little bit out in some districts. But those districts are mostly represented by Democrats, and so whether the Republican House members feel anything at home on the impact is kind of remains to be seen.
I remember passing parts of the budget as late as 3 days before Christmas, 40 years ago. I mean, look, I've seen this many times.
You've seen this movie before?
Many, many times. I mean, things changed when they moved the start of the fiscal year from July 1st to October 1st, way back 40 years ago under Milliken. And it stayed there, but the schools always said, we don't want to wait until October 1st. We gotta know by July 1st. So they put in this phony July 1st deadline with no penalties if they don't pass the school aid bill. So I think this is going to drag on and on and on. And I think you saw this from Matt Hall in the spring. He was always equivocal about whether they were going to meet this July 1st deadline.
Mr. Stokes.
I agree with all that you said. If there's a good news in all of this, it's the fact that they aren't really quarreling over the amount of money. We're talking about roughly $22 billion that's going to go to schools, 10,000 plus per pupil. So they aren't arguing over that. And we've seen times in which they were far apart on just the amount of money. What we're talking about now and arguing about, they are priorities, how the money is going to be divvied up. And as Clara said, whether or not it's going to be one great big bill or whether or not they're going to split all this stuff up. And there is time. Yes, July 1st is important for the superintendents, but it's not a death sentence. October 1, that's the date that everybody does not want to hit, because then you start talking about shutdowns and stuff. But there's a lot of jockeying, political jockeying here. I get the impression, though, that that they're going to come up with something. I think it's going to be probably late July maybe drags into August, and as Bill said, they might even get close to that shutdown date of October 1.
Maybe we'll have our own one big beautiful bill right here in Michigan.
Well, I get an impression that we're going to get status quo. At the end of the day, this is going to end in almost a status quo budget. No big deal on roads. No big deal on no major cuts in universities. No major cuts or shifting of money around. No goring of the ox of the corporate subsidies. They're just going to battle this down to nothing.
What about the foundation grant?
Well, they can get rid of categoricals. The Republicans have done that before when they were in charge. There might be a few things like that, but at the end of the day, like, there is no pressure right now for roads. There's no one out there standing in potholes talking about how bad things are, Brooks Patterson style. And if anything, people are just tired of massive freeway projects, which have been funded by Governor Whitmer's credit card purchase of $3.5 billion, and otherwise they're just not interested, and there's just not a lot of people out there clamoring for either higher revenue to pay for roads or for a major diversion of money, including their schools' money, for roads.
But one thing that is complicating it a little bit on the education side, and the superintendents are feeling pressure, is because of the amount of federal dollars that have been cut. And that's a big hit. And now they've got to figure out, okay, we got this gigantic hit that's come from Washington. We don't know exactly where they're going to settle in on the state money, even though they've got a really good feel for it. They're going to have X amount of money to work with. But it's still, where is it going? How's it going to be divvied up? Democrats want it for special education, things that they feel are programs that help to enrich education experience. And the Republicans feel like they want their dollars to go more directly guided to academics and performance.
All right, so you guys know that every political story has a winner and a loser. All right, so we're going to work here and say the losers are the schools. Politically, who is sitting back watching this dysfunctional effort going on in Lansing and going ka-ching? What's his name, panel?
Matt Hall.
Wrong. Mike Duggan.
Yeah, that's probably
Mike
right.
Duggan.
You're correct. He said if
this
I was
is in his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
He is sitting at home setting off fireworks. Say thank you, Lansing.
Yeah.
They just served up a fat one.
Shutdown would be a great messaging for Mike Duggan. He could say only I can fix it.
The commercial is waiting to be made.
Yes.
On the day that lawmakers were supposed to give the schools money, what did they do? They left town.
Right.
It is time for a different approach in Lansing, and I'm it.
No, I think you're right. I think that's right in
can start
his
writing
wheelhouse.
TV ads right
Right in his wheelhouse. Yeah.
Does that make up for getting the other story wrong? I'm trying to do a make good here, guys. Help me out.
It might not even get to that point. I mean, just to be fair, like, there has been some movement this week. It's not like they went into negotiations last week and left off where obviously the end result didn't materialize, but we did see, Speaker Hall make some moves towards maybe accommodating Democratic demands on universal school meals and rural transportation. Obviously, there's still a lot of sticking points to these negotiations. It's just not totally clear what those are. The leaders don't want to talk about it for fear of, derailing the whole conversation.
That rural transportation thing is a big deal. I mean, the rule of thumb is in outstate Michigan, you're a Republican lawmaker. There's two people you're scared of. It's the hospital CEO from the local hospital and the superintendent who's calling up saying, I can't get my buses out to, at 6:45 to pick up these kids, and you've just cut our bus funding. And so, I mean, if the Democrats want to go message something right now, it'd be like, Matt Hall's going to cut your bus funding, and put the pressure points there. And that's what when we talk about categoricals, these line items of money that some conservatives think is just like special pork for certain schools. Some of it's very critical if you are running the school district district, in some rural in Tuscola County, that in a rural area of Tuscola County, and so that's why some of this will turn into a summer of messaging, just like we saw. Go back to 2013 when everybody left town because they couldn't get a deal on Medicaid, and then the billboards went up.
Come on back.
And certain senators were just absolutely,
That was Rick Snyder that put up the billboard and took on the legislature, and Randy Richardfield, the Republican leader, went ballistic.
Well, Gretchen Whitmer's got a huge 501c4 she could go spend money on, a billboard campaigning, try to pressure Matt Hall and Republican House members. We'll see if she wants to actually play that kind of ball, though.
All right, we have never before in this town had a state police director sit before an oversight committee wanting to know why 98% of his troops don't have confidence in him. What did you make of that hearing?
I mean, it was pretty fascinating. This wasn't a pretty picture, some tough questioning, heated moments, and they basically said, you're welcome to come back in 6 months and give us a progress report. So it seems like there's going to be some serious follow-up here.
If he lasts that long.
Sure, yeah.
You think he's toast?
He could be, I think, sooner rather than later.
Well, he said, look, at the people I'm talking to are happy.
Who's he talking to?
Obviously, the people that weren't in the survey. What do you make of this story?
I mean, James Grady's the career servant in this position, and he's not the first state police director who's been enthralled in some kind of controversy.
This is true.
Personnel matters, lawsuits. I mean, this is kind of par for the course.
Saying things about football players putting down their knees.
Yeah, this is kind of par for the course for running this department, this expansive agency that has a central headquarters, but then has like 50 outposts, and try to manage all those people. It's not an easy job, and people do burn out of this top job, fairly quickly. There's never, in recent memory, been a long-term state police director, and so I think it's kind of, we'll see. I mean, inevitably he's got 18 months left on the shot clock with this administration, anyways, and they don't usually carry over as well. So,
and you got to wonder how much of this pushback is because he's been pretty out front in terms of making changes within the department as an administrative level, with a rank and file that's used to doing things the way they want to do it. And he's been very outspoken on bringing more diversity into the Michigan State Police. There's a time when that was very popular. This is not the time in which that's popular, given the current administration. And so his timing may be bad in terms of that, even though it may be a lofty goal for that particular
Part of his problem
workforce.
is the deputy superintendent. She's not popular either. They hate both of them. The rank and
I think
file.
where this is headed, a political commission of civilians overseeing the state police.
Yeah.
Is that not a possibility?
I mean, we'd have to get the Senate to agree to that. I don't see them going along with that. I can see the House Republicans wanting to try that.
Yeah.
But also, does the next Republican governor want to deal with some commission that dictates who is in their state police? I doubt it. And so if you're like one of the 9 people running for governor on the Republican side, you might be calling up the legislature saying, don't do this.
All right. So we got the Attorney General alleging that the MEDC was stonewalling at the investigation that's going on, and it got kind of ugly.
This is fascinating. I mean, so we saw the search warrant that was executed by the Attorney General's office at the MEDC headquarters in Lansing last month. We now know kind of what led up to that through new court filings that have been released and first reported by the Detroit News. A pretty dramatic depiction of stonewalling that the Attorney General's office is asserting that the MEDC basically delayed providing receipts and invoices and documents, witness names, which is why they felt the search warrant was necessary. And then we're seeing this depiction of the search warrant with the Chief General Counsel of the MEDC raising serious objections to the agent, saying she'd be arrested first before they search her office. So
they're looking into a controversy. It's a $20 million contract, a gimme that was given out.
It was a grant to a businesswoman named Faye Beydoun, who used to be the head of the American Arab Chamber of Commerce, and she had lobbied for this $20 million to start a business accelerator nonprofit organization.
And she has connections.
She has connections. She
Lots
used to
of
be a leader in the Michigan Democratic Party. She was a bundler for Gretchen Whitmer's 2018 gubernatorial campaign. And she was at the time appointed by Whitmer to 2 different state boards, including the executive committee of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation that we're talking about, which made this very incredible to have someone on the governing board of the agency going to the agency and asking them for money, and then as we found out, getting some support of some sort from the governor's office to then go to the legislature and secure it in the $1 billion late night spending spree they did here on June 30th, 2022. And so now we are here 3 years later. The MEDC has canceled the grant after they had discovered that, one, besides the $4,500 coffee maker she bought and $11,000 first class ticket to Budapest, she also was paying herself $550,000, which is the equivalent of 3 times what the governor is paid to run this state. And the MEDC's chief general counsel, this Linda Asciuto, accused Baydoun of misusing the money and an inappropriate high amount of money going towards her salary.
This is one of the few times Republicans are cheering on Dana Nessel, because if there's any entity that they hate more than Dana Nessel, it's the MEDC.
Well, wait a minute. John Engler created the MEDC.
But they've never
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
No.
Not
This
anymore.
Republican Party does not like the MEDC. They think it's corrupt. Now, the MEDC, in its defense, is literally just the administrating agency that this money flows through.
It's a pass-through.
At the end of the day, a Republican legislature passed a bill that authorized this money. Now there's some dispute on whether Jason Wentworth, the Speaker of the House at the time, actually asked for it. He claims he didn't. The governor's office is trying to pin the tail on him and say that he did it. But now we're finding evidence in the emails that the Attorney General just dropped into court. And this whole court fight, this is the most incredible part about this. There was a search warrant for Faye Baydoun's house in Farmington Hills. And the MEDC goes out and hires big-time criminal defense attorney from Miller Canfield to file a motion to quash the findings of the subpoena in Lansing, in the MEDC headquarters. They go to the district court in Farmington Hills because it's 2 different jurisdictions, and it was clearly looks like a little bit of a judge shop. And at the Farmington Hills 47th District Court, they don't get big fights between the AG and the governor very often, like we do in here in Ingham County District Court. And so they went and fought this. This judge, looked at it and said, "No, MEDC or the AG's office can hold on to these documents. They use what is called a taint team. They're going to go through and see if there's anything that's privileged, attorney-client privilege." As Linda Asciuto, this lifer over at MEDC attorney, was asserting, and they're going to then sort those out, and then Dana Nessel will carry on with her investigation, which, by the way, she has now disclosed it has to do with embezzlement. And we know from the reporting that Baydoun was still sitting on at least $5 million of this grant when they canceled it. She already had the money in the bank, which is just exposing a whole raft of different issues with these earmarks. Now that people just basically were able to just walk in the legislature, politically connected people, and get money with one piece of paper and then go cash it in at Treasury. And Nessel's digging into this, and I think there's going to be more problems for other people in this town who went on, got in on the spending spree.
You got to wonder if Nessel's getting any sleep these days between what's going on in the state, between all the lawsuits that she's doing against the Trump administration and the federal government. She is one busy person in Lansing.
What has the governor said about all of this stuff?
Well, she better say something pretty soon, because it's going to come down on her. There's too much smoke for there not to be fire somewhere that people are going to say the governor should be on top of this. And guess who will profit from all this debate? Mike Duggan.
Oh, we're back to Duggan again. But the one thing about the governor's office, so Gerald Gleason, this Miller Canfield attorney who was hired to represent both MEDC executives and Joanne Hulls, the chief of staff
for the governor.
Highly unusual that you would have a lawyer representing just one member of the governor's inner circle and executives over the MEDC, whom she, as the chief of staff, supervises. And Gleason said in court that I'm representing witnesses. Right. And so the implication is that Joanne Hulls, chief of staff of the governor, is a witness to something that involving this investigation or this potential crime or embezzlement. Again, no one has been charged yet, but just be clear. But that, and then the other aspect of this that came out is that Faye Baydoun, before she got the grant, sometime in 2021, sent an email to Trish Foster, Chief Operating Officer of the state, one of Whitmer's closest advisors, longtime friend from East Lansing that she brought in, originally ran DTMB. So another top member of the governor's inner circle is also was aware of this, and the way this email is structured is a way that we think lobbyists talk to principals in this town. Hey, I'll send over the language for the bill to get my money into the next supplemental. That's literally what Faye Baydoun said in an email to Trish Foster, the chief operating officer, who was involved at times in negotiating supplemental budget bills during this 2021-2022 spending spree when there was all this money sitting around.
Story not over yet.
No, definitely not. I mean, as Chad mentioned, the sort of connections to the Whitmer inner circle here. But, I mean, you have MEDC, which is saying we've been cooperative, the AG's office, which is really disputing that pretty strongly here. And this is a serious escalation, and you have to wonder, you know, how is this playing out in this ongoing rift between the relationship between Governor Whitmer and Attorney General Dana Nessel, two top Democrats?
I mean, I've been saying this for a while, but this raid and this revelation in this 137-page court filing that the Nessel's office filed over the search warrant fight. I mean, Nessel has in the next 18 months the ability to set this town on fire, and it's very clear she just might.
She's got the matches. All right, let's talk about a petition drive to make sure that DTE Energy and Consumer Energy can't exercise their democratic right to contribute to politicians.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is just another potential petition drive to add on to what I think we're up to like about 6 or 7 now that may end up on that 2026 ballot. And basically what they're saying is it's a group of nonprofits, and they're saying if you're getting over, I think, $250,000 worth of grants, then you shouldn't be able to donate to the campaigns of politicians. For DTE and consumers and other utilities, that's a scary thing because they are used to donating a whole lot of money and spreading their money around to both Democrats and Republicans to make sure that when issues come before the legislature that are important to their industry, that they have gotten into everybody's ears, and they have been pretty successful throughout the years.
The late state representative Gary Glenn would certainly applaud this petition drive.
He was a conservative Republican who was actually went after the utilities on this stuff, right?
Look at he called them terrorists.
And they
returned the favor.
They came and terrorized his primary with their
the average
dark
Joe
money
out there who pays their utility bills and is saying every time we look around, one of these utilities are coming asking for a rate increase.
All right, so do they get the names to get this on the ballot?
Well, they have the power of voters, not politicians, which is part of this
the
coalition.
Gerrymandering
exactly.
And got 600,000 names.
So, I mean, that's, a positive indication that they'll be able to pull this off. I mean, we've certainly seen legislative proposals in a similar vein in the past on this front to try and crack down on corporate PAC spending for lawmakers. I can imagine a lot of politicians aren't going to want to cut off a source of funding for their campaigns. But what's interesting about this is that this is an initiative petition, which means lawmakers are going to have the chance to take it up first, get on the record before it would get on the ballot.
Why did they go the initiative route?
lower
threshold.
threshold of signatures.
Yeah, okay, all
Not
right.
as many signatures required. Remember, there are a bunch of other ballot proposal petition drives out there right now, and every cycle there are a huge number out there. And the question is, how many are actually going to qualify for the ballot next year? And then when they do, what happens when the voters face the ballot? Like in 2012, 6, and remember the opposition
Good
just
laundry
vote
list.
no.
No on
And
everything.
all of them went down, all of them lost. So this thing is going to get caught up in other ballot proposals that might make it to the ballot in November of 2026.
Ballotpalooza 2. Yes. And well, one thing to note, the contracts part of this is not just catching DTE and consumers. They're the ones that are names are
Right,
on it. But
right.
on contracts, this catches Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Yeah, which
and
does-
other big insurers that have, they get big money through Medicaid deals with the state or healthcare contracts and whatnot. So this is going to catch a whole lot of special interest in this town and make them disclose their spending and come out from underneath the darkness here that's been going on in this 2-tier campaign finance system where some campaign donations get disclosed and the rest get to be spent, behind the scenes, and we have no access or understanding just how big of an extent of their spending it is.
The only people that are benefiting on all these petition drives are all the TV executives.
I was sitting here just about to say the exact same thing. There are TV executives, of which I work for a corporation that makes money off these type of things. They're looking at this and they're saying, yeah, this would be good for election year because that's a lot of commercials and a lot of spending. And we're talking about organizations that have the wherewithal to be able to run big campaign
Gentlemen
ads.
and lady, thank you for a great show. See more of Off the Record right here next week. Have a safe, quiet weekend. See you then.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Bellwether Public Relations, a full-service strategic communications agency partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and issue advocacy. Learn more at bellwetherpr.com. For more Off the Record, visit WKAR.org. Michigan Public Television stations have contributed to the production costs of Off the Record.